Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
I'm joined by California Congressman Democrat Ted Lieu, a member of the House Judiciary Committee. Thank you for being here, Congressman. A busy night. Let me read to you from an NBC report. One witness asked about Trump's business interests in Moscow, surmising afterward the Mueller investigation may be focused now on business dealings during the campaign, as well as what I mentioned at the top of the hour, a focus on what Donald Trump knew about a potential criminal conspiracy involving the emails. On 1 to 10, how big are these developments, if in your view, true? And what do they mean to where the probe is headed, in your view?
Thank you, Ari, for your question. I would rate it as an 8. The American people now know that Special Counsel Mueller's team is at a point where they ask the critical question, what did Donald Trump know and when did he know it? We already have been informed from George Papadopoulos that the Russians told him they had thousands of Hillary Clinton's emails. The question now is who else in the campaign knew that? Did Jared Kushner know? Did Donald Trump Jr. know? Did the president himself know? And in terms of business interests, we know that the president still refuses to release his tax returns, and he's given conflicting statements as to when he first met Putin.
And I imagine you are invoking the famous Nixon question on purpose.
Absolutely. This has all the markings of Watergate, where you have a person acting not only to obstruct an investigation, but also taking actions that are inconsistent with what an innocent person would do. So let's, for context, remember that as we sit here today, the president still has not imposed bipartisan congressional sanctions on Russia. He still has refused to condemn the Kremlin or Vladimir Putin for their attack on American elections in 2016. And he still has refused to order the NSA or FBI to stop an attack in their future.
You think about this, and it does change some of the benefit of the doubt that people may have afforded to what was a bizarre, rookie, unusual campaign. And there are bizarre, rookie, unusual campaigns that do not end in a series of indictments. So you can understand to some degree how things may have looked at the time. I want to play for you, though, a candidate who, as a bizarre rookie, seemed obsessed with WikiLeaks. He wasn't interested in foreign policy. He wasn't interested in transparency organizations in general. And yet WikiLeaks for him, which we now know is under part of the criminal probe, was a priority. Take a look.
Boy, I love reading those WikiLeaks.
Did you see another one? Another one came in today. This WikiLeaks is like a treasure trove. Out today, WikiLeaks just came out with a new one.
This just came out. WikiLeaks.
Of course, you didn't know that there was a thing called WikiLeaks, right?
They got it all down, folks. WikiLeaks. WikiLeaks.
How does that look to you now?
It looks really suspicious, and just because Donald Trump was so public and brazen about some of his statements doesn't mean it's not illegal. If it turns out that he had advanced knowledge that the Russians had thousands of Hillary Clinton's emails, and he helped to strategically amplify the release of those emails, then that is collusion, otherwise known as conspiracy.
It is Thursday, the 1st of March, of 2018, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. It is Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. That's our daily special, and what a special day it is. Well. Ted Lieu is quite a troll. I think he's the good kind of troll, and we need more Ted Lieus. Thank you, Ted Lieu. Yes, that was Ted Lieu at the top there, explaining Trump's, or he was comparing Trump's brazen and suspicious obsession with WikiLeaks. And really, the Trump White House and their scandals are Ted Lieu says, looking more and more like Watergate. I would say it greatly surpasses Watergate, Iran-Contra-gate, Teapot Dome scandal. I don't know. Take them all, put them all in a big pot, mix them together, and that's the Trump White House. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. Well, Hope Hicks is no longer in the White House. She's gone back to New York. Yeah, spend more time with family. 29-year-old woman. So young. The media calls her so young. Of course, I remember a kid in Ferguson who was like about 18, and I don't know, he was a scary man. But when you're pretty, and like Hope Hicks, I mean, let's be clear, Hope Hicks has the look, and the story is that the last straw was that Trump berated her for telling Congress that she tells little white lies. And apparently he was just yelling and screaming at her, "I don't lie. Why did you say that I lie?" And so then she had to lie to him, saying, I know, you don't lie. And that was another white lie. Well, I've been accused of, on more than one occasion of being somewhat like the Big Lebowski. And when you tell little white Russian lies, they really bring the room together, don't they? Okay, what do we have on the rest of the menu today? Well, starting off in the Bistro Cafe, we'll look at the U.S. Olympics chief is resigning in the wake of the USA gymnastics abuse scandal. And better now than never, I suppose. A series of leaks exposes the New York Times newsroom is openly revolting against its editorial page editor. And a long-lost portrait of a Nigerian princess dubbed the African Mona Lisa sold at auction in London for $1.7 million, exceeding estimates and setting a record for the artist. Good for him. Then after the break, we move to the chef's table, where we will investigate the armed white nationalist militias preparing to muster this Saturday, near Charlottesville, by the way, to intimidate a pro-immigrant law firm and all their lawyers and employees. Armed, too. It's a protest. They're calling it a protest. They're mustering. And the Cincinnati lawyer representing the dozen neo-Nazi white supremacists from the deadly march in Charlottesville last year says he took the case because he believes, and this is a quote, "White people must save and preserve their civilization from Jews, immigrants, and minorities." Happy Purim to you, huh? All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. To netrootsradio.com. That is, of course, our homepage. And if you scroll to the bottom of the page, to the rightish, is the chat room link. And our rowing girl, Kelly Lincoln, monitors that very diligently throughout the day. Another way to contact us would be on Twitter at Netroots Radio, and Tom monitors that platform. I can be contacted on Twitter at Justice Putnam. Fancy that. And show notes and links are on my Daily Kos diary that I post at Daily Kos about 10 minutes before showtime. And you can find me on Daily Kos as Justice Putnam. So you can also get links to podcasts to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, as well as the Justice Department Musique Sans Frontières. The links are there, and that takes you to Spreaker. But you can also pick up podcasts on TuneIn, Stitcher, and I'm still trying to figure out whether West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is on the iTunes registry, and I will attempt to follow up. Okay. So, this first story here is out of Agence France Presse, and they only have worker bees there, and very anonymous. They don't tell me who wrote this. So, some staff worker bee penned this for us. United States Olympic Committee Chief Executive Scott Blackmun has stepped down following calls for his resignation in the wake of the USA Gymnastics abuse scandal. It was confirmed yesterday. Blackmun, who faced stinging criticism for his handling of the case involving Team Dr. Larry Nassar, which rocked the sport, departs after 8 years in the role. Well, he had a good long life. The 60-year-old administrator had recently disclosed he was battling prostate cancer. Given Scott's current health situation, we have mutually agreed is in the best interest of both Scott and the USOC that we identify new leadership so that we can immediately address the urgent initiatives ahead of us, USOC Chairman Larry Probst said in a statement. Larry Probst. The USOC is at a critical point in its history. The important work that Scott started needs to continue and will require especially vigorous attention in light of Larry Nassar's decades-long abuse of athletes affiliated with USA Gymnastics. Now let's remember, this just didn't come out of the proverbial vacuum. I mean, Larry Nassar didn't go all these decades and no one said anything. I'll tell you what happened. Women said something and no one did anything. So, get rid of Blackmun. He's got prostate cancer. It's not because of his inability to address these terrible abuses, harassment, criminal sexual abuse. USOC said board member Susan Lyons would replace Blackmun as interim chief executive as the hunt for a permanent successor got underway. Well, just leave the woman in there. Oh, I know. They got to find some, pudgy white guy to take over. They always do. So, Blackmun's departure comes after he faced calls to resign for his alleged failure to act swiftly as the Nassar scandal unfolded. Claims rejected by the USOC. Yeah, because it would open him up to civil penalties, too, which they are going to be sued for. Multiple U.S. senators had demanded his resignation after a Wall Street Journal report that said USOC was made aware of allegations surrounding Nassar in 2015, yet did nothing to intervene. The USOC had defended Blackmun's handling of the case, with Probst telling reporters in Pyeongchang at the Winter Olympics this month that he did what he was supposed to do, and he did the right thing at every turn. Keep saying that over and over and over, and it might be true, at least in your mind. Next up here in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. Why does grits get such a bad name? I mean, why is it such a bad reputation? Grits are good. Come on, especially the way that I prepare them. It can be gourmet, but you can also think it's just like down home, right out of your home. Jeez, grits are good. Come on. And shrimp and grits with, a little bit of jambalaya spice. Boy. Okay, this is, this next article here is by Jacob Sugarman out of the Alternet. Now, a series of leaks has exposed the deep dissatisfaction with James Bennett's stewardship at the editorial page and everywhere. Since Donald Trump was elected president, the New York Times editorial page has waged a frontal assault on its readers' intelligence. Just this month, it has published pieces defending Woody Allen and Aziz Ansari against allegations of sexual abuse, and another scolding liberals for not being sufficiently respectful of gun owners in the wake of the latest mass shooting. In between, the paper hired and fired its leading commentator on technology after learning she counts a prominent neo-Nazi among her close friends. Subscribers are taking notice, and they are not alone. According to a Vanity Fair report, Times reporters have grown increasingly frustrated with the paper's op-ed section and fear it may be undermining their work. Isn't that always the case? Anywhere? Look at the Wall Street Journal. As one anonymous senior staffer put it, until yesterday, people felt like opinion was a shakeup. Now people are worried. The newsroom feels embarrassed. At the center of the controversy is editorial page editor James Bennett, who earlier this month sent out a 1,500-word memo to staff outlining how he interprets former Times publisher Adolph Oak's original mission for the section. The memo was a response to an earlier HuffPost story containing internal chat transcripts of Times employees expressing their disgust with the op-ed section, specifically the contributions of recent edition Barry Weiss. We're not just letting 1,000 flowers bloom, Bennett writes. We are picking our contributors with care. Really, Bennett? Are you? Looking for people who share Times standards for fairness and intellectual honesty and originality, who believe in empiricism and the essential equality of all human beings. We are, as ever, editing and fact-checking our work. In this reporter's opinion, that statement is a bunch of hogwash. Jeez. And as Sugarman here basically corroborates what I just stated. Discerning readers might disagree. Over the past year, Times has not only published a Bret Stephens column questioning widely established climate science, but found itself the subject of a defamation suit from Sarah Palin. And that came after suggesting that inflammatory remarks made by the former Alaska governor helped incite the shooting that nearly killed Arizona Representative Gabriel Giffords. The lawsuit was ultimately dismissed after a judge determined that the Times had not acted with malice. Well, let's be clear. Gabby Giffords was in a Palin political advertisement in the crosshairs of a gun site on a poster saying, "We are taking these representatives out." And Gabby Giffords was taken out. Along with some other people. A little girl got killed in that incident. So, let's be clear. Sarah Palin's the same one saying, the problem with violence and gun violence in America is because too many people are watching violent video games. Okay. But, she did sue, and I guess maybe the great lady, the paper record, should have been a little bit more, suspect in their publishing of that particular article about her. Several weeks ago, the paper ran a column titled "Background Checks are not the answer" from John Lott, a gun rights advocate whose research has been repeatedly debunked. Days after his publication, a 19-year-old gunman opened fire on Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, killing 17. Background checks are not the answer. None of this has been lost on Times staffers who recorded a recent meeting with Bennett and leaked it, again to the HuffPost. What emerges from this latest report is an editorial page rife with internal contradictions, a case study in how essentially liberal institutions are undermined by the tools of their own liberalism. Bennett professes that the section is humanist and universal, yet recognizes select forms of ethnic cleansing as worthy of consideration. He proudly forswears the idea of right answers, but insists capitalism is the greatest anti-poverty program and energy of progress the world has ever seen. He claims climate science is settled, but is nonetheless willing to indulge Bret Stephens' skepticism. Meanwhile, Bennett deems Richard Spencer unworthy of publication, not because he's a white nationalist, but because he represents a fringe movement. The Times is not the only major newspaper whose opinion columnists and reporters are openly warring with each other. Last October, members of the Wall Street Journal newsroom anonymously voiced contempt for their paper's feverish defenses of Trump's presidency amidst a rash of indictments in the Mueller investigation. They said, "We disprove half the stuff the opinion writers are saying if they just read our own reporting. It's like living in some alternate universe," a Wall Street Journal newsroom reporter said. Well, thanks for catching up, buddy. What makes James Bennett's editorial page so egregious is that, unlike the Journal, the Times is considered the country's paper of record. Not only has the op-ed section failed to live up to its own lofty standards, it can't even lay claim to the intellectual contrarianism it champions in defense of its most incendiary content. If your goal were to wage war on media diversity in all its forms, and to offer the narrowest range of views possible, it would be hard to top the roster of the columnists the paper has assembled. Well, that's Glenn Greenwald writing in The Intercept. Okay, well, I'll just say that's Glenn Greenwald. Okay, while Bennett has acknowledged that the page remains a work in progress, neither he nor newly appointed publisher Arthur Sulzberger III seems especially interested in changing course. There's no question that social media amplifies the freakouts, Bennett tells Vanity Fair. Right now, it's really hard to separate the signal from the noise. I don't know. Maybe I should be running the place. I can tell the difference between signal and noise. Can't most of us listening right now? Jeez. Meanwhile, Sulzberger offers this chestnut. We publish dozens and dozens of op-eds a week. Look at them as a whole, and you'll see the breadth of voices there. Sure, Eric Prince wrote in our pages. You know who else has written in our pages? Bernie Sanders, and not just once. If the Times views a war profiteer and a democratic socialist as equal and opposite viewpoints worthy of publication, if it's truly willing to embrace this brand of superstitious illiberalism, perhaps Bennett's editorial page is beyond saving. Finishing up here in the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, is an article again out of Agence France-Presse by another anonymous worker bee there. Yeah, the African Mona Lisa smashed all estimates at that London auction. A long-lost portrait of a Nigerian princess, dubbed the African Mona Lisa, sold at auction in London yesterday for $1.7 million, exceeding all estimates and setting a record for the artist. The 1974 painting of Adetutu Ademiliu by Nigerian artist Ben Enawanu was expected to fetch up to $414,000 when it went under the hammer at Bonham's auction house. Now, the painting is affectionately referred to as Tutu, which is the abbreviation of Adetutu. It described the painting of an Ife royal princess, which recently turned up in a London flat after not being seen in decades, as rare and remarkable. The portrait of Tutu is a national icon in Nigeria and of huge cultural significance, says Gilles Pepier, Bonham's director of modern African art. He uncovered the work after a family in North London contacted him following lucrative recent sales of Nigerian artworks at auction. Pepier added the family were pretty astounded to learn it was a missing masterpiece. It was very exciting to have played a part in the discovery and sale of this remarkable work, he said. Booker Prize-winning novelist Ben Okari told AFP earlier this month that the painting has taken on almost mythical status in his native Nigeria, where it was thought of as the African Mona Lisa. It has been a legendary painting for 40 years. Everybody keeps talking about Tutu, saying, "Where is Tutu?" he said after a viewing at Bonham's. He wasn't just painting the girl. He was painting the whole tradition. It's a symbol of hope and regeneration to Nigeria. It's a symbol of the phoenix rising, Okri added. The painter, Anawanunu, who died in 1994, is considered the father of Nigerian modernism. He made 3 paintings of Tutu, the locations of all of which had been a mystery until the recent discovery. The works became symbols of peace following the clash of ethnic groups in the Nigerian Biafran conflict in the late 1960s. Enawanu's work, Negritude, also painted in the 1970s, sold for $138,000 in the same sale. The auction was broadcast live to a Bonham site in Lagos, where bidders were able to participate in real time. Okay, well, good for the estate of this, well, I guess it wouldn't have been to the estate of the artist, would it now? Because he's been dead. And those paintings were, seems to me that he, looks to me that he sold these paintings for a fraction of what they were probably worth, which is usually what occurs. And then, the next person gets to jack up the price. That's how it is in art, but good that they found the painting, and I would hope that maybe the people who bought it would maybe put it in a museum in Nigeria for all Nigerians to be able to appreciate. Let's get to our break, and we'll move everything back to the chef's table, and then we'll talk about the weather there and the rest of the stories that we have listed. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Christopher Intagliata. The annual meeting of the National Rifle Association is coming up in May. It's scheduled for Dallas. And if past events are any guide, gun injuries may actually go down in Texas during the event.
When the convention is held in a person's state in that year, gun injuries fall.
Anupam Jaina, an economist and physician at Harvard Medical School. Jaina and his team discovered that surprising link by tracking visits to hospitals and emergency rooms for gun injuries during 9 years' worth of NRA conventions. And they found the number of people hurt by guns dropped 20% during NRA meetings, compared to the same days of the week 3 weeks before and after the show. There's no definitive causal link here, but the researchers do have a few ideas. First, could be avid gun users are at the show, away from their guns, or shooting them in more supervised situations, and thus unable to injure themselves or others. Or, if some members of a regular gun club are out of town, maybe the group postpones its meetup the week of the show, thus avoiding accidents that otherwise might have occurred.
It could be the case also that people who own venues where firearms might be used, like firing ranges or hunting grounds, may be likely to attend these conventions. And if those venues are closed, they might expect to see declines in gun use during that period as well.
The results are in the New England Journal of Medicine. The NRA didn't respond to a request for comment in time for this report, but Jaina said their objection might be, why would gun injuries decline 20% if only a few percent of gun owners actually make it to the show?
I would assume that roughly 2% of people who are gun owners who attend NRA conventions are probably much heavier users of firearms.
And assuming you believe guns are inherently unsafe, people who shoot their guns a lot might also be more prone to injury than those who keep them locked away all year, which would mean that NRA conventions might actually protect some gun owners from themselves. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Christopher Intagliata.
How rigged are the elections for the United States House of Representatives? I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. In 2016, in the popular vote for Congress, Republican candidates beat Democratic candidates by 1%, 49 to 48. That 1% difference in the popular vote translated into a 47-seat majority for Republicans in the House. We're talking primarily here about gerrymandering. And before the United States Supreme Court now are cases that raise the issue whether gerrymandering, no matter how grotesque and partisan, still is permissible. Meanwhile, one state, at least, is doing its best to restore democracy. In Pennsylvania, in 2016, Republican congressional candidates won 8% more votes than Democrats, with the result that Republicans were awarded 13 of 18 congressional seats, or 72%. In other words, the 8% margin in the popular vote became a 44% margin in the number of seats won. But the Pennsylvania Supreme Court just struck down that state's congressional map as violating the state constitution, and the United States Supreme Court in all likelihood will not touch that decision because it's based on the state constitution and not the federal. Which leads us back to the cases before the U.S. Supreme Court, which will decide by the end of its term in June whether congressional maps can be drawn so as to almost ensure the result before any ballots are cast. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU, because freedom can't protect itself.
Even Charles Dickens, England's masterful satirist of the Victorian upper class, could not have imagined elite rulers using a box of food as a gratuitous way to slap poor people. But Donald Trump and two of his slap-happy cabinet officials did imagine it, and then did it. They slipped a malicious punish the poor provision into the food stamp budget that Trump sent to Congress. Instead of providing a small monthly allowance for destitute families to spend on foods of their choice, the Trump provision would take away half of the allowance and substitute a monthly box of peanut butter, canned goods, and other packaged edibles chosen for them by the federal government. It's bureaucratic, patronizing, demeaning, and stupid. But Trump Ag Secretary Sonny Perdue hailed it as, quote, a bold initiative. Sonny has also disdainfully said that food stamp recipients are hooked on a culture of dependency, so maybe a diet of peanut butter will cure them of that. Then came Trump Budget Director Mick Mulvaney, a Tea Party extremist who bizarrely tried putting a luxury spin on the government-issued box of grub by comparing it to Blue Apron, an upscale grocery delivery system. But Mick, get a clue. Blue Apron patrons get to choose what's in their box, and it ain't peanut butter, it's locally sourced fresh food. As the leading Democrat opposing the Trump mob's food stamp gut job says in dismay, my God, these people are awful. Really just not nice people. This is Jim Hightower saying less nice is their real intention to kill the food stamp program entirely. Trump's budget calls for slashing 30% of the funding this year. As watchdogs at the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities put it, that's the real battle. The food box silliness is a distraction to let them pull off the big theft. To help stop them, go to cbpp.org. cbpp.org.
If you'd like more of Jim Hightower's real populism, check out the Hightower Lowdown. Jim's monthly newsletter gives you the real lowdown on which corporations, by name, are doing what to the middle class, our environment, and our democracy. Each month, the Hightower Lowdown brings you facts you didn't know, along with actions you can take to fight back. It also comes with a sense of humor. Hightower believes we can fight the gods and still have fun. Plus, get this, it's cheap. Only $15 brings you 12 issues a year. For real populism, go to hightowerlowdown.org.
This is Solidarity News on Radio Labour.
This is a Radio Labour special report recorded on Wednesday, February 28th, 2018. I'm Mark Boulanger.
We have to make unionists aware in every country about what is going on elsewhere as well.
That is Terry Bell, a longtime Labour journalist based in South Africa. He spoke to a communications seminar organized by the global union Industrial. Industrial represents some 50 million workers in 140 countries. They are members of unions in the mining, energy, manufacturing, and garment production sectors. Mr. Bell was asked what unions can do to better communicate to their members and the public.
I think part of the reason here is it's a matter of not communicating internally, and that's because I think there's been too much of a concentration on trying to contribute to outside forces or outside media. But at the same time, I think there's a lack of skill. There's a lack of training among communicators, and you need communicators. Many of the unions also don't use full-time communicators or trained communicators. It'll be the general secretary or the president who'll go out there and make some pronouncement or write sometimes a grammatically badly phrased press release, that sort of thing. Whereas you actually do require professional communicators who really know their business, who know the sector they work in, who understand the union, and above all else, understand the principles of trade unionism.
Mr. Bell was asked what media unions should concentrate on when trying to get their messages out.
In Africa, we're talking primarily about radio, because radio is perhaps the most commonly listened to or most commonly heard media anywhere. Print media, to a degree, in certain areas. Again, it depends on what market you're trying to reach, which audience you're trying to reach.
Mr. Bell was also asked about how unions should be operating as globalization accelerates.
One has to stress, I think, over and over again, that everybody, we have a common interest in looking after our interests, looking after our planet. If you're going to take it on the broader scale, we all have a common interest as sellers of labor. And what that means is the overwhelming majority of the population in any community, country, throughout the world, globally, are workers. And that has to be the first point that has to be stressed. And then what we have to stress is the fact that, as in the South African Constitution, the Bill of Rights, not the Constitution, the actual Bill of Rights is a fantastic document which talks about the dignity of all shall be cherished. This is the point we have to make clear. That an egalitarian society is a better society. And for that reason, that is what has to be stressed as the underlying shall we say, principle upon which everything else is built. So you don't go in there and simply argue for, in a wage dispute, for example, we want this amount of money. No, you point out how much people are earning as in proportion to others, who's being paid what. The fact that we had in South Africa 2 years ago the CEO of a supermarket chain who was paid 163 million rand for 1 year, whereas workers on the shop floor were being paid less than 3,000 rand a month, which is, 36,000 rand a year. That's the sort of thing that has to be stressed. The inequality, and also on a global basis, we have to make unionists aware in every country about what is going on elsewhere as well. We should know, for example, in South Africa about what happens in Bangladesh, what happened at Rana Plaza, where a building collapsed, killing 1,134 people immediately. And most of them were women, young women, between the ages of 18 and 20, and 2,500 people injured, some of whom died later. We need to know about that, because that is what the clothes we wear. Where do they come from? Look at the label. It's not a matter of saying, well, go and buy South African or buy Senegal or buy Zambian. No, we must become aware so that we can build a society, a global society should be what unions should be stressing, a global society which practices equality, which practices dignity of all, not just for the few.
And that's it. International labor news you can use. I'm Mark Boulanger. Thank you for listening. And remember, it's all about global solidarity.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table here at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. We always start off with a palate cleanser, which is weather from around the world, and we always begin along the banks of the Rogue River and the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America. It is currently 37 degrees, and according to the Weather Underground, it even feels like 37 degrees, and that's good. So we will have nearly the same temperature that we had yesterday, expected to have a high of 43 degrees. Well, we had a high of 40 where I'm at. So maybe it'll be the same. We will be in we remain under a winter weather advisory and will through tomorrow. And so a wintry mix. And as I look out the window, it is indeed a wintry mix, though more of the rain part of the wintry mix. And that will be, as I stated, occurring all day. Winds will be out of the southwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. They're out of the south-southwest right now at about 1 mile per hour. We call that negligible. And then, of course, it will pick up to 5 to 10 miles per hour. And snow showers will be occurring early tonight with winds out of the south at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Tomorrow, we will continue with rain. So as long as it seeps into the ground, fills aquifers, puts a substantial snowpack in the Cascades, everything is good. Well, speaking of good, the air quality index is good at 13 parts per million. That's good. Barometric pressure is falling at 29.6 inches. Visibility is at 7 miles. And humidity is at 87%. And now, weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. They planted these weather stations somewhere on their property. And these people live around the world. The guy in London is registering right now 30 degrees Fahrenheit and cloudy. Paris is 35 and cloudy with a winter advisory warning as well. Rome, Italy is 54 and mostly cloudy. Also, even though they're at 54, they have a winter and wind advisory. Kiev is 16 degrees with a snow shower. No winter advisory for Kiev. That's just normal weather for them. Kabul is 44 with light rain. Hong Kong is 65 and mostly cloudy. Tokyo is 52 and clear. Sydney, Australia is 68 degrees and mostly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 52 degrees with rain and wind. And they are also under a wind advisory. And New York is 56 degrees Fahrenheit and fair. And that is weather from around the world brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these weather stations somewhere on their property. And these people live around the world. All right, first offering here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays, is an article by Stephen Rosenfeld by way of Alternate. Now, this Saturday, some of the same nationalist militia groups that took part in last year's Unite the Right rally that turned into a riot in Charlottesville, Virginia, will now converge on the nearby town of Verona, a very small town where the nationwide offices of a pro-immigrant and anti-white supremacist law firm is located. Well, Alternate Stephen Rosenfeld spoke with Mike Donovan, the CEO of Nexus Caridades, about the nationalist militias targeting his civil rights firm and his plans for a counter-protest. So this law firm provides services to immigrants, including those without visas. And apparently what happened is that the local police contacted the law firm that the same groups responsible for the Unite the Right riot in Charlottesville were planning to hold protests at his offices on Saturday. So this fellow Mike Donovan said that the first he had heard from the state police and local sheriff was what they wanted a meeting with him, but he was out of town. And when he finally got together with him, he was actually a little bit surprised because this particular law firm has sued both the sheriff and the local police repeatedly. So he considered it a bit of a surprise that the cops requested a meeting with him. And so when he got back into town, they had the meeting. He was informed that there was a protest planned for this Saturday, that they anticipated as many as 500 people might appear at the rally, and that was according to the state police, and that's from what they heard or what they investigated. And these militias will be armed, which is interesting to me. And they told us that the county had made certain decisions. They were going to close the road, which was the only road in and out of our complex. There was not enough room for 500 people to be held in a grassy area. We get the sense that there will be protesters across the street and funneling onto the street. This is fellow Donovan here, Mike Donovan. He also thinks that they were trying to limit vehicular traffic after Charlottesville. The police did seem very concerned, and I have to give them credit. I think they have done a great job, and they let us know pretty quickly, so we were able to find out some of the individuals who are organizing this rally. Now, there's a gentleman named Larry Lewis, who's one of the Virginia leaders of the 3 Percenters. You know, this is these cop groups. Now, I was a little surprised. I looked up the 3 Percenters. I don't want to call them a gun rights group because that's not fair. They're more of a weapons of mass destruction group. They believe that people should be able to own assault weapons and weapons of war. They tend to protest with those weapons. Calling them a guns rights group doesn't do enough. They're obviously a fringe group. They're an anti-government group, according to the SPLC, the Southern Poverty Law Center. And he hadn't seen a lot of anti-immigration stuff that they've done. He's seen some. Certainly, they post on their social media about immigration. But when I started to look a little deeper into the organizer, he was very clearly a white supremacist, anti-immigrant, with an anti-immigrant ideology. I think he believes, just by pursuing his social media, that immigrants present a clear and present danger to his perceived community and perceived world. The guy clearly is a bit demented, and it seems that the folks that have rallied around him share those views. Now, it's important to understand that even demented people have the right to protest. This fellow, Michael Donovan from the law firm, says, I respect the First Amendment. I think that if they want to come and protest, they absolutely have the right to do that. But I believe that there's no place for weapons of war and protests and peaceful demonstrations. They shouldn't bring those weapons to our campus. They should keep them away. And in the marketplace of ideas, the better ideas win. And there's no reason to have guns at protests. Well, when you don't have a good idea, you need a gun. How else are you going to win? And the second thing that Don wanted to say is that they're going to stand against that division and hate. And they're going to stand up for what they believe in and in our vision of the world, which is a vision that affirms and promotes the inherent dignity of every single person. So, let's see. The militias have a permit to protest from 12 to 4 p.m. on Saturday, local time, on March 3rd, outside the Nexus Services and Nexus Caradade's offices in Verona, Virginia, about 30 miles west of Charlottesville. And if you want more information about the counter-protest, call 540-448-0436. That's 540-448-0436. They are asking counter-protesters to gather by 11 a.m. and be willing to stay until after the militias march is over and police clear the area.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers, c'est tout.
All right, finishing up here on the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Metro Shrimp and Grist Thursdays is out of Cincinnati.com, which is part of the USA Today network. Well, this lawyer that's representing the dozen or so neo-Nazi white supremacists that took part in the deadly march in Charlottesville, the Unite the Right rally, he is a piece of work himself. So when they needed to find a lawyer, they didn't know that they would find one in Deerfield Township in suburban Cincinnati, where they found James E. Kolenich, a civil rights attorney who said he has only one thing in common with his new clients. He believes white people must save and preserve their civilization from Jews, immigrants, and minorities. My willingness to get involved is to oppose Jewish influence in society, he told the Inquirer. And that's the Cincinnati Inquirer, by the way. It's plain that white people are the chosen people in the New Testament. Really? Have you learned geography, Mr. Jurisprudence, huh? JD? Do you have any idea the ethnic makeup in the Middle East? Well, apparently not. He goes on to say that it's the job that we were given, meaning his type of white people, to spread Christianity around the world. That does not involve hatred of other races, not even of ethnic Jews. But it does involve opposing their unchristian influence in society. Well, Kolenich is a new name in the pantheon of alt-right, a loose affiliation of racist, white nationalists, and anti-Semites. The Southern Poverty Law Center, which tracks hate groups and their leaders, do not have him listed. Local Jewish, Catholic, and interfaith groups in Cincinnati condemned his views as offensive and un-American. His views are an affront to all people of goodwill who want an accepting and just community for all people, said Robert Chip Herod, convener of the Bridges of Faith Trialogue, a local interfaith group. Now, Kolenich's opinions reflect beliefs that, in part, prompted the Roman Catholic Church to issue its new doctrines in 1965, Herod said. Kolenich's involvement in the federal case has thrust the lawyer into what might prove to be one of the nation's most politically and racially charged court battles in years. He is one of two lawyers working to defend the Charlotte's Unite the Right organizers against charges of conspiracy to incite violence. He plans to argue they have a constitutional right to express their racist and anti-Semitic views, even if violence and a deadly attack occurred during their assembly. Let's keep this clear here, folks. The case is also bringing Kolinich's own views on race and religion into focus, although he said he considers some of his clients to be godless heathens. He is more than just a hired gun representing people he doesn't like. He said he got involved in this case because he believes some... He said he got involved in this case because he believes some Jewish people are dead set on destroying America and turning it into a third world country thanks to mass, uncontrolled, unwhite immigration. Horrors. Okay. He said he got involved because of his beliefs on this point align with the white supremacists he represents. Oh, God. Well, before Kolinich, 47, agreed to become involved in Sins versus Kessler, he primarily represented clients fighting the police or the government. His clients often claimed their Fourth Amendment right, which protects against unreasonable search or seizure, had been violated. In Cincinnati, his highest profile case has been defending a Taiwanese software engineer accused of a series of rapes in the city's small Taiwanese community. Kolinich called the charges a police fairy tale, but his client was found guilty and sentenced to more than a century in prison. Okay. I don't know. They say he's more than just a hired gun. What kind of gun is he bringing to this fight? Kolinich said he was introduced to the Charlottesville case by a Cincinnati area friend, James Condit Jr. of Greentwip, has denounced Zionist control of the world politics and alleges Jews played a role in September 11, 2001 terrorist attacks. Of course, we all know those were done by Saudi Arabians with Al-Qaeda. And Condit has also run several times in Southwest Ohio's U.S. House seat. He reached out to Kolinich when the Charlottesville organizers were having a hard time finding legal representation. And well, they should. So this guy goes on to be described as a traditional Roman Catholic. He considers that his belief about Vatican, the changes the Vatican made back in the 60s. He says, we're all traditional Catholics, but his siblings are, in his words, either standard issue American atheists or Vatican II Catholics. And the last council was Vatican II, or as we like to call it, Vatican Jew, Kolinich said during an interview in his office. Okay. So he believes that the Jews killed Jesus because Jesus was a Jew. And he got killed by other Jews, so obviously they are the evil of the world and we must kill them all. Okay, well, he is unapologetic in his strong views, and I guess these neo-Nazi white supremacists have the exact counsel that they need. And which, if any of his previous cases prove, they will be spending a lot of time in jail. And well, they should. All right, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for today. But Netroots Radio broadcasts continuously, and because that's our prime directive. And we will not stop. And they will not stop us, whoever they are with a capital T. So continue listening to Netroots Radio. Breaking news as we speak. I can't even get into it. There's too much news. I just glanced at it. I can't even get into it. Everything happens while my show is going on. And I'll have to attend to it somewhat tomorrow, which will be Blue Moon Spirits Fridays here at West Coast Cookbook. So continue listening to Netroots Radio throughout the day for breaking news. And join us tomorrow here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Ba-da-da-dum-dee-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-dee-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver, dans mon jardin d'hiver.